Hello and welcome to the webinar. I'm Paul Merrill from Beaufort Fairmont Test Automation Services. We're based in Cary, North Carolina, and we focus on test automation. This is what we do. If you need help with supporting your test automation effort, whether it's through people that can help you or training in a particular methodology or skill, or if you need help figuring out what your approach to automation should be or figuring out specific problems that you have with your automation, we're the folks to call. So make sure to look at the website, beaufortfairmont.com, and learn a little bit more about our services and those things. I love having the opportunity to bring you folks with wonderful ideas. And I'm so excited about this one today, the Automation Maturity Heuristic. And if you're not excited about this title, I don't know what to say. I'm thrilled about it. I'm looking forward to learning what it is. And I always look forward to Brendan. He is a wonderful voice and a wonderful perspective in the test automation community. He speaks at conferences all around the country and around the world. He's based in Santa Barbara, California, and I'm looking forward to you discovering him if you haven't heard from him before, or heard of him. Notice his Twitter handle is here. Go follow him right now, VB Connolly. And I'm sure he would like that. So lots of good information on his Twitter feed as well, and a good way to contact him among others. We always get started with some upcoming events. So that you're aware, here are a few things that are going on. On the 22nd, which is tomorrow, that's January 22nd tomorrow, I can't believe it, I'm doing a webinar on STPCon's webinars, so Software Test Professionals webinars. And some of you have seen this one, some of you have not. If you haven't, join us tomorrow. Go to STPCon and look for their webinars, and you can find this one. I'll be speaking about return on investment for test automation and whether or not you're getting it, how you can get more of it. So join us there. The 26th and 27th of February is our big event. So as some of you know, I volunteer. I'm a volunteer member of the board for the Triangle Software Quality Association, TSQA. We call it TISCA. So TISCA is a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to helping testers in our area of the country. So this is the Research Triangle area in North Carolina, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, Cary, all of these areas. We help testers in this area grow their careers, learn new things. We bring in speakers every month, and then every 2 years we have a conference. And the conference is the most affordable conference you'll ever go to. You can send your folks across the country to this thing for less sometimes than going to a bigger for-profit conference and get almost the same thing out of it. We do 2 days. First day is workshops, second day is the conference day. This year we are so fortunate to have Angie Jones speaking as the keynote speaker, and she's wonderful. She's got a brand new talk she's putting together about flying cars, and I'm excited about that one. The one day, so the second day, the 27th, is $149. The 2 days together, I believe, are $400. And make sure to look to our sponsors in the next few weeks for potential discounts. They'll all be getting discount codes, and you can go to them to find a little discount in addition to this, but you don't need a discount. For $149, you can get in the door. It's awesome. We've got Lisa Crispin. I'll be speaking, Jenny Bramble. We've got a number of local folks having their first chance to speak. Damian Sinadinos is coming down from Ohio. We've got Mike Lyles. Lisa Crispin will be there. Rex Black will be at the conference and signing some of his books and have those for sale as well. And always a good person to talk to, Rex. So lots of big names in the industry will be there with big ideas that can help you take great testing skills back to your organization. I'll be at STPCon in March, April, so the beginning of April there in San Diego, California. And I've never been to San Diego, and I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to see what that area is like. If you have good ideas about what I should do in San Diego, make sure to send them to me, okay? I look forward to hearing that. If you're a regular, you know what this is. This is the B list, and if you've made it, congratulations. Thank you so much for whatever you did for me. Sometimes this is as little as a short conversation, a supportive note. Sometimes this is retweeting something. Maybe it's an extra follow here or there, or sharing some content from our site out on the interwebs. So thank you so much for whatever it is you've done. For sometimes it's supporting the community. Some of these folks are on here because they're doing such a great job in the community, and I've seen it and I wanted to call it out. So thank you for what you've done. I have some needs. I still need an automation engineer. I actually need more than one of these. US only. I'm looking for people with 3 or more years of automation experience, someone with a bachelor's degree or work equivalent, and automation first mindset. So this is the idea that, hey, look, we've got a problem that we need to solve. How can we solve it with automation? That's all I'm looking for. The person who thinks that first. That's one of the biggest pieces of this. This is a remote position. It must be located. You must be located in the US. I'd prefer North Carolina, Colorado, Iowa, or Illinois, but I'll consider other locations. But it is remote work. There may be a little bit of travel involved. Go to this URL or go to the website or email me to try to submit for that. Thank you very much for your interest there. I'm going to have some other roles in the next year here: recruiting, account management, sales. If any of these are appealing to you, or you know someone who is, please contact me. Even a part-time assist in recruiting and account management and sales could be helpful. So if you know folks who are interested in those areas, I know if you're like me, you're technical and you're like, what's a salesperson? How do I find it? I would never meet a salesperson. We don't hang out. But maybe you do. Maybe you cross the chasms of positions and you know those folks. If you do, send them my way. You may also know that we do a $50 Amazon gift card giveaway. Stick around to the end of the webinar for a chance to win. And it could be you. Every single month we do this. And I'm so happy that we're able to do this. And it's just a little perk. If you're at a webinar, you're enjoying it, you're learning a lot of stuff, you've met Brendan, and you think, you know what? I wonder who's going to win that $50. It may be you. It may be you. Before we get started here, I want to do a couple things before I introduce Brendan. Well, actually, let me introduce him first. He's going to talk about the automation maturity heuristic. And let me find my correct buttons here. Thank you for your patience. Hey, Brendan, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm glad you're here, or good afternoon for me, good morning for you, right?
That's right, 10 o'clock.
I'm so glad you're here. Brendan is a test automation engineer and does a lot of work in the community for this, as I've already mentioned. Brendan, I want to do a couple of polls before we get started here. And the first one is, what is your interest in this webinar? So I know a lot of people come to these webinars for different reasons. I want to learn more about that so that I can provide better information and better content for you. So take a moment, please, put some information here, make sure to vote on which one you think is best. Many times with these polls, we get 75, 80% of people voting. And that's very helpful to me. So take just a second and vote. I know some of you are in a room with your team and you're trying to decide, no, it's because I had nothing better to do, boss. And the others are like, you know, anything automation is interesting to me. So take just a minute there. That should be enough. I'm going to close this and I'd like to get your thoughts as I share the results here. Brendan, it looks like anything automation is interesting to me was the winner. Is that what you thought it would be, Brendan?
I'm sad that it wasn't about me, but I'm excited about everybody's excited about automation.
But you were close. You were up there. This particular topic is interesting to me, 43%. So that's interesting as well. So I'm going to hide those results, and we're going to do one more before we get going here. And I want to learn a little bit about your company, and Brendan may want to learn a little bit too to help him guide the conversation here. A couple of notes as you're doing this poll. Make note, you may be on the web UI for GoToWebinar. You may use the native interface for this. Either way, there's several sections here that you can do things with. The one that we use the most is the questions area. So you'll find a questions area in there. And this is where you can type your questions anytime throughout the conversation today. Toward the end, Brendan will make time to answer questions. But take a minute to look at the interface so that you're ready. And you can type in questions anytime. It won't interrupt Brendan. We're going to have a specific time to stop and answer them. And let's see what this poll is doing. Okay, so it looks like 71% have voted. I'm going to close the poll and we're going to share this real quick. So it looks like the majority of people said they have some automation that works, 54%. 32% very mature, includes CI/CD, and this is consistent and reliable. 10% we've tried a few times but haven't really succeeded, and 4% none. So I'm wondering, Brendan, if maybe the topic, your topic, is why we have that particular group. What do you think?
I think so. I think it sounds like it's a good fit for the audience.
I bet it is. Good. Well, everyone, I'm going to leave you to it. I'm going to make Brendan the presenter here, and we're going to get going. Thank you so much again for being here, Brendan.
My pleasure.
And let me know if you have any challenges in sharing your screen. I'll be happy to help.
All right, can everybody see okay? Sound like a good, Paul?
Yep, it looks good. Thank you so much and good luck.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Brendan Connolly, as Paul already told you. I'm a staff QA engineer at a company called Probor Technologies, and we're a construction management platform, and we like to think that we're building the software that builds the world. You'll find my Twitter handle and LinkedIn information on each slide. That's at the B Connolly, and I also blog at brendandconnolly.net. And if you ever want to reach out to me to chat more about this or just to say hi, you can find me at either of those places. So as we get started, I want you to take a moment and ponder your place in the automation universe. I want you to think about how you feel about automation. And also, how does automation make you feel? And with that in mind, how do you think that compares across your team, your organization, and the software industry at large? And let's hold that with us as we talk through these slides and see how that carries through. And it might sound silly to be talking about how you're feeling about something technical like automation, but so often these projects are wrapped up in people's hopes and dreams. Right? It could be our manager's hopes for how the automation is going to affect things. It could be the dreams that you have. Maybe you're upskilling your career, looking to get promotions, looking to become more technical, more marketable. Maybe you're scared a little bit about automation leaving you behind. So we often see things like automation is going to improve testers' motivation. It's going to improve optimization for speed. It's going to increase coverage. It's going to allow us to do all kinds of other things. But with things being so personal, the way your team is tackling something, it can be really hard to separate your solution and your team's solution from the overall context of automation. To help with this, we've got something like a maturity heuristic. And this isn't a new idea. We've seen this before. Leonard Richardson created a maturity model for REST APIs. Just because it was similar place. When REST was taking off, everybody wanted to be doing REST. It was popular, it was a buzzword, but everybody's implementation of REST varied wildly from Fielding's paper. So it got really difficult to understand when you talk to somebody about where their API was, because API means a lot of different things to different people, even now. So what we want to be able to do is kind of categorize our automation in the same type of shape of information that we see with the Richardson Maturity Model. And he broke it down into 4 levels. And because it's developer-centric, it's zero-based. And at the first level, it was basically HTTP as a transport. And everything, all information was posted or sent to one HTTP endpoint. And that was usually XML at the time. As we moved up to the next level, we started having other resources. And that was having different endpoints for different parts of the API. In order to move up to the second level, or level 2, we started having different HTTP verbs, like put, post, those type of things across those different endpoints. And then finally, the real glory of REST was hypermedia controls. And you might recognize HATE-OAS as the acronym, hypermedia as the engine of application state. And that's a lot of times thinking about having links inside the payloads of your API to help it be discoverable, what kind of actions you could do, and other types of things to help people discover the APIs. But automation's in a similar place. Your framework probably looks very much different from other companies' frameworks. So we could use a tool for comparison and conversation so that we could have a more meaningful experience and share with each other. So let's take a look at what an automation-centric version of this model might look like. Level 0 is test without a framework. And at this point, our automation is going to be tool focused. We have a problem, we've got tests that we want to automate or some tasks that we want to take care of automatically. And we want that gone. We don't want to spend the time every release. We don't want to spend it every week doing the same things over and over again. And some person took it upon themselves at this point to find, read about, or got sold on the tool just for that job. But we're going to take this tool and we're going to apply it as a solution to a problem that we already know. And this is kind of the dream that we get sold when we see automation. And we have this stack of these manual test cases. People are slogging through them each week. They're struggling. They're not happy. And then we apply automation and we reach the zen of automation. Everything's exciting, we're calm, all the tedium of test case management is out the window. It's kind of like being a kid in the candy store. Right? We're all ramped up, we're sugared up, and we're ready to conquer the world. But there's a couple problems with this candy store situation. The first is, who's the kid in this candy store? I bet you're imagining it yourself as you, right? With all that excitement and all those choices, everything looks delicious. I'm going to do so well. I'm going to get promoted. I'm going to do all this great stuff. But we rarely get to choose the tool or stack, technology stack that we use. So maybe we aren't the kid in that candy store. Maybe it's not you. Maybe someone else got to make those choices. But what if the kid is somebody else entirely? What if it's a manager who's excited about the prospects of automation? Do you still feel the same? Let's also start questioning, what kind of person runs a candy store? Like, what are the motivations? What are we trying to be sold? What are we trying to fix? How does that actually fit inside of our context? And the whole idea of today's world and with candy stores and selling these things to children, doesn't that feel a little bit creepy? Doesn't that give you a little bit of pause when we start talking about automation and how we apply it to our work? It's not that the candy store itself is bad, and it's not that tool vendors or anything else is bad. But inside of a candy store, it's hard to make healthy decisions. So when we walk out of the candy store, we've made our decision. The reality is there's this looming dinosaur. And I want you to think for yourself, who's that dinosaur to you? Is it the language that you have to write these tests in? Is it your framework? Is it your manager? Maybe it's the testers on the team not wanting to cooperate, right? That dinosaur is different to everybody else. And on your teams, there might even be more than one. But at this level, let's not be so quick to judge. Before we start going and patting ourselves on the back, thinking that we know better than just scripts and the problems that those lead to, we kind of have to admire this position. It's admirable. Someone is taking it upon themselves to look for a tool and resolve a personal problem. And it's a tangible one, right? At this level, the tests that you're creating and the scripts that are being written are actually a one-to-one mapping to tasks that people are actually doing. It's saving people time. Because it's not the tool's fault that we may start to outgrow these things. What we're doing is finding direct impact to improve a tester situation. And that's something we should all strive for. We shouldn't be so quick to judge this level. As we move up, we start to have a framework exist. This is level 1. We start to see and feel that the need to have a little bit more structure around our automation. And some of this is because the honeymoon phase is over. We are so excited about this tool. It's kind of like the sugar binge is wearing off. We've got some tests starting to fail. Maintenance costs are accruing. And the truth of the matter is it's a lot easier to create a test suite, a set of tests. That's the exciting part. But keeping one and keeping it healthy and running is very difficult. It takes a lot more motivation and effort to keep these tests running and providing meaningful information than we usually expect. We just don't have the maturity at this point, or the previous points, to be able to maintain those things. So at this level, so much of what we're doing is unifying automation. We want to make it portable in the sense that we can take these scripts that are probably being run on individuals' computers or maybe a shared server, and we want to make those portable and they can be run across other people's machines, maybe across a cloud provider. But we also want that information to be portable. Portable in the sense that it's internally consistent, so that knowledge is portable across areas of our automation. Because the way one person writes a script on their machine is going to be different than the way you probably write a script on your machine. And so if we can start making those things more consistent, more people can contribute, we can have more unified results, and ultimately our test code becomes more maintainable and our tests become more reliable. Right? So we're bringing all that together to try to improve it. To do this, level 1 is very much pattern focused. Some of this is going to be the page object model pattern, where we start encapsulating some of our actions inside of other objects. There's other patterns as well, and something like the screen plate pattern, if that's something you're not familiar with, I'd encourage you to take it out. It's pretty exciting and interesting. And some of the reason we're so focused on patterns, though, is at level 0, the only structure to our scripts are imposed by the tool. At this point, we're starting to add our own structure to our tests and our test code. The patterns aren't just design patterns, though. We're introducing other patterns like conventions, things like how do we name our tests? How do we structure our tests? What goes in test setup? Do you use teardown? And we're starting to centralize this through abstractions, right? We might include a base page or some other common areas of code that we can centralize to minimize other problems with maintenance of problems. And it's exciting to start doing this stuff. Like you feel like you're doing the work that you're supposed to be doing, right? We feel like we're working towards a good goal. We want our test code is becoming more and more like what we see our traditional developers doing. And we're very quick sometimes to include things like abstractions and inheritance. And I want to take a second and encourage you to pump the brakes. We're still learning, we're still growing. And what we can find when we start, it's exciting to add inheritance. It's exciting because we feel like we're doing the right things, but it's so much harder to unwind these decisions than it is to introduce them. I want you to think about a pull request, a change request for your framework. How would you feel about the pull request that introduces a base class, consolidating some code into one single area, versus the change request that takes out that base class? The whole conversation is different. People's feelings are different, right? You're going to feel like I'm doing the right thing because we're drying out our code. That's the right thing to do. Removing it, we start to get very uncertain. Like, well, what used all that code? What are we doing? Isn't this the bad practice? But when we going through these exercises, what we're finding by adding patterns and conventions is what we're really doing is adding process to your code. Somebody has to enforce those rules. Somebody has to maintain them. And what it's doing is it's increasing the bureaucracy and complexity of your code base. And if you're upskilling testers into automation, anytime you add an abstraction or another layer of inheritance, you're adding and increasing the barrier to entry. So as we move on to level 2, what we can start to see is a multi-layer framework. Right? We're no longer just doing things through the UI. We're starting to include other pieces. Maybe you've got an API you can consume. Maybe you're writing towards the database. And we're starting to see this because we're kind of a victim of our own success. We've got so many tests and we have so little time. So we start finding a way to try to cut down this response time so we can get a quicker time to feedback. Because every single sprint, every single release, we've added more test cases. And every time we add them, it takes a little bit longer to run, takes a little bit longer to get feedback. So more and more effort is going into maintaining and executing our tests. So at level 2, what we're really doing is we're seeking efficiencies. We want to drive the reliability and the frequency of execution of our test framework and our test code up. Right? So the more we can run it, the more feedback we can get, the better we feel about our test, the more information we can provide. And the more reliable, the more trustworthy that our tests are. And at the same time, we want to reduce the time that it takes to run those tests and the overall cost of maintaining them and executing them. So at this level, we are architecture focused. We're turning to our applications layers and we're going to leverage those layers. And throughout our tests, we're going to start carving out as much of the excess UI as we can from our tests. We're going to start just focusing on what the UI test components that we really need to make it more reliable and faster to execute. And what this involves is finding seams in our application so that we can stage our UI interactions. Like I said, maybe you want to stage seed data through your database or make API calls because those are much more reliable. And what we can find ourselves with is a place where we've got now a hybrid maturity across our framework. And you can see here, this is the Black Panther. This is a Marvel Comics card on the back. This is from my childhood. And I always love looking at this. There's a little skills matrix on the side there. And you can see the Black Panther has a different set of skills, and some of them are much stronger and much more powerful than others. And this is kind of where we are with our framework. We've been building up our UI components and those page objects, and we feel at this point, we're hoping if you're getting to this stage, you need to be more of reliability. Those components are solid, they're executing well. But now we start introducing API calls. And that part of our framework is brand new. We're almost starting over at level 0. How often is the first thing you do? You just have a raw HTTP call right inside of your test code, maybe, or right inside of a small wrapping function. You don't have the same framework and patterns established for your API. And you have to have decisions about how those things fit together. And the same if you're using SQL, right? How does that get managed inside of your UI framework? And what kind of things do you have to do? So if we're going to turn to our attention to our application architecture, we have to look inward and look at the way we're building and architecting our own automation. Because we're increasing the complexity for the benefit of speed. And what you can find yourself with in this case is kind of an existential testing crisis. Because what really is going on? Because so often what we had is when we go with UI only testing and end to end, we have this mantra of we're going to do things as the customer, right? And that's what makes us comfortable in spending so much time and effort going through the UI, because everybody kind of knows that this isn't the ideal place to be testing. It might be your only option. It might be the best option for you based on how your team is. Maybe you've got some legacy code. But it's challenging because we can find ourselves with questions like, what are we actually testing here? Because now instead of going through and logging in as a user, creating the data as a user, going through the UI for each of these steps, we're accepting an approximation like, okay, now I'll have the data seeded through SQL, I'll inject that before the test, then I'll consume it, and then I'll clean it up afterwards. But a lot of times, the way you can write data into your database or through your API doesn't have the same set of constraints that going through your UI does. So you can find yourself with situations where your test data isn't as clean as the ones that your users are adding. So you can start to have more and more esoteric and kind of awkward conversations. What steps are we allowed to do through the API? How does that affect how our users' experience is? Are we missing something too? Because if it's slow working through the entire workflow, are we taking a shortcut that our users can't take? What is this test? What is the particular interaction that's being tested at this level? So to be able to work at this level, your team needs to be mature enough to have these kinds of conversations and have answers for them. Because what we're really doing now is we're opening the door to lower levels of the testing pyramid. If you don't need to do everything through the UI, do we really need to test at this level? Can we accept another approximation and maybe do an integration test? And maybe it's only an integration test, or maybe we can push it even farther. Maybe it's a unit test. And if you can't answer these questions, why are we at this level? Because you're not prepared to handle the kind of issues, because all we're doing at that point is adding tests and making it faster. We're not worried about quality. We're almost more focused on automation bragging rights. How often does the question come up, how many tests do you have? Ever been on an interview where the team is so excited to tell you just how many automated tests they have? Oh, we've got 5,000. That's fantastic. I have no context for what that means. Is that good? Is there missing ones? That seems like a lot though. Well, how long does it take to run all those tests? And some people are excited to it takes 6 weeks for us to run our tests, or it takes a full sprint, or over the weekend. But what's worse? Is it good to have it take a long time because there's so many of them, they're so powerful? Or is it better to say, oh, ours run in 10 minutes? Because then now we're getting fast feedback. We've scaled ours to such an extent that we can run those 5,000 tests in 10 minutes. But where's the conversation about quality in this? We're not in a competition with unit tests for speed and quantity. So what we can find ourselves is kind of a rift in quality, where we're adding tests and almost as like our output is only automation. But when we're really under the charter of team quality, we're adding automation to help our customers have better success and more reliable experience. But our automation doesn't always reflect that. A lot of times we have other alternative motivations that are leading us towards automation. And to help with this, I want to introduce you to something that I call the handful heuristic. And this is that each area, and there's air quotes around area that's going to vary by your context, but each area of an application probably only needs a handful of end-to-end tests. And if this makes you tense up, I want you to think about kind of the starting place that we talk about for adding tests, CRUD tests, right? We're going to add a test that's create, read, update, and delete. But in that group of just 4 tests, we have 2 that are already kind of suspect in value. And I bet you can guess what they are. The first is read. Read is tricky and it trips up a lot of people starting out in automation. How do you get data to validate the read? Do I create the data inside of my test through the UI and then read it off and that's the separate test? Do I write it to the database and then consume it? And I bet you don't also, with how much value are we adding that? Because we're probably indirectly getting that test through our validation, through our assertions when we do create and update tests. And the other test that's kind of suspect is delete. Now this function and this functionality definitely warrants a test. But does it really warrant the full end-to-end treatment? Right? Is this something that we can test at the API? Is it something that we can test at the controller level for applications? Like we really need to understand to add value here, what's different about our UI versus our API? What's the difference there? What are we actually testing at this level? And do we really need it? Because every test we add increases the complexity and the cost of your automation effort. And I want you to think about carrying groceries. You can easily handle a handful of groceries. You can carry it in from the car. You don't need a bag. You can open the door without any troubles. You can close the trunk. You start to get into 2 handfuls of groceries. You probably need something else to carry it in, or you're going to have to juggle. It's hard to get in the house. So you get a bag or a box for larger loads. But how hard does that get, right? You always kind of struggle a little bit, like you're moving around, you're trying to not drop stuff, you're trying to not squish the soft stuff. So the tests, when you carry your tests around that same way, it's the same thing. Right? It's awkward to carry that many around. You start to have to find other tools to make it more manageable. And that gets tricky too. You kind of trade one problem for the next. And I can hear you thinking, but we need all those tests. Right? Management wants them. We want them. We want to make sure all of our testing is replaced. The manual tests, we want to replace those with automation. And maybe you do want to automate those tests, but do you really need them at the end-to-end level? I think we need a lot less at the end-to-end level and more of an approach to test throughout the pyramid. Because are we adding the tests at this level because we don't trust the developers or their tests? Is it because we don't understand what's going on at the unit and integration level? Are we testing like this because it's the domain where we're most comfortable? We understand the UI, so this is where we add our tests. And at some level, are we just doing this because we can? It's easy to add another test, and it's harder, and maturity, it's harder not to add them. It's harder to have restraint. And being mature isn't just doing what comes easy. So at the next level, level 3, we're going to talk about a testing SDK. And if you're not familiar with it, SDK is an acronym for Software Development Kit. And this is a set of software tools and programs used by developers to create applications for specific platforms. And a pretty solid example of this is probably if you're a Java shop, the Java SDK. Right? That's the set of tools that you need to write Java code and build Java code. At this level, we're going to be platform focused. Our automation is now not just a set of tests, but it's a platform for quality. Right? We're going to have a set of tools that we can compose into solutions. Right? And one of those solutions will be traditional end-to-end, able to be executed headlessly tests. But we're also going to package things up in a way that we can consume the other ways. So we can have tools for people, or easily make scripts or other things to see data or work through parts of the workflow, parts of testing that you can find troubling when manually testing. So we're going to primarily look at how we can use our test automation for both traditional automation and other things to help extend quality and help our manual testing folks. And to do this, we really need to reframe and kind of stretch our definition and our understanding of automation. And a really nice way to kind of look at this, the lens for it, is to consider the benefits of yoga. Like, how can we use yoga to improve our automation? Because the benefits of yoga include creating peace, raising consciousness, increasing flexibility, relieving pain, raising consciousness, and reducing anxiety. And how many of you can honestly say that your automation, whether you're just getting started or whether the current state of it, gives you any of those feelings? But I think we can. So let's look at how we can increase flexibility through automation. The first step is to start questioning, why are we building a monument to automated tests? And I've referenced the test pyramid here a few times throughout this conversation. And I don't have a fundamental problem if there's some good insight into how you should structure your tests, like the quantities of testing here. But it's by no means a comprehensive and holistic view of quality. It's all about tests. And pyramids are cool, but they're not efficient, right? These are monumental efforts that took extended periods of time to build. We don't have that kind of time. And if you start looking at the pyramid, do you kind of know what's missing? Where's your application in relationship to the pyramid? Where's the relationship with quality? So instead of working towards satisfying these constraints of a pyramid, I want you to instead consider building a quality cathedral. And where you can think about this is the core inspiring part of the cathedral is that tall middle part. That's where, even if you walk in today, I was recently in Prague for Eurostar, the conference, and I went into some extremely ancient buildings, and it was just jaw-dropping and amazing to think that people hundreds of years ago had built these kinds of structures, and they were still awe-inspiring today. I would be impressed if this was built today, let alone hundreds of years ago. And that was because of the heights and the quality that I could see there. And that's core in our applications. At the bottom, we still have a foundation of unit tests that are supporting our building. But rather than building up a mountain of tests to support those heights and that beauty, we should use things like the flying buttress. And those are those freestanding supports that you can see on the sides. And the buttressing are just the arching areas. Then they go and support just the areas of your application that need support, where they need it most. So we can create tools and libraries to counterbalance the risk of raising the quality and extensibility of our applications with efficient supports, right? Maybe manual testing is a primary thing on your team. And your team as a testing strategy can have a buttress that is the manual testing. That's okay if that fits. If it's working for you and you've got customer value, that's okay. Maybe on the other side, you're starting to add automation. That's a lower level arch and you're gonna build it up. But it provides a means to have a more holistic view of and quality-centric approach to automation and a testing effort. The next thing we're going to look at is how we can start to relieve pain through automation. And I saw some people were just getting started or not very far along in their automation journey. And it's painful. Automation isn't easy. There's a lot more failures than there are successes. And it can create some severe tension across your team about the people that are automating versus those that are doing other types of testing. So what I'd like to see us do as a community is start lifting everyone on their teams up with automation, explaining it in a way that we're not removing tests from people. We're not taking things away to make things easier for them. We want to serve people so we can solve the problems that they're having. Part of that is going to be rapid testing that automation provides. But some of that is going to be finding tools that make their day-to-day jobs easier. And the more we can use our same code, our page objects and our API client code to create tools and help people, the lower overall cost of our automation effort, because no longer are we racing to add more tests and execute them faster to show ROI. Instead, we're growing our total addressable market. There's more people that consume our automation. Therefore, we can have higher returns. We're affecting and having more impact on quality than just our tests. And you might be like, well, I'm not sure about this. I like to think of it though as a little bundle of joy. Right? You can drop off a little tool that stages data for your users, for other users. That person's gonna be extremely excited. You can create scripts, little apps, chatbots, all that help testing. So often though, we also have external integrations that we kind of say don't fit well into our automated testing. But it's really important to check that we're reporting to like an exception handling web service, maybe like Bugsnag, or maybe to an analytics provider like New Relic, or maybe a logging platform. Well, those platforms have APIs too. And you're as an automation person, you can create a client piece of client code that can interact with that API. Right? We have a mail service that we use at my company. They have an API. I can call it to that web service. I can check for the mailbox has been updated, and I can actually pull back the HTML and render it so that the tester can see it while they're testing. They no longer have to go through context switch, log into some third-party service, and take and search for it. Right? It's things we can do to make much more efficient use of testers' time. And hopefully through doing things, these give us a platform as automation engineers to start open sourcing projects and sharing these across different teams, right? Because maybe that API doesn't have a client that's already built in your language or stack. So now your automation team can feel like they're winning, sharing some of the code, because so often our framework code can't be shared. You can't open source parts of your framework because it's all proprietary. Doing things like this, we lift everybody up and give more people time to shine. So let's look at how we can raise consciousness about automation across the team. Because so often it's hard to get testers that aren't automation engineers engaging with automation. Right? It's something that's just run, and they might look at the results. And it's really hard to contextualize automation in relationship to a tester's activities, because we're not really replacing their actions. Even for common cases and the common like baseline tests, testers are still going to have to step through those to be able to actually touch the new feature code. So as much as you might feel like we're taking tests away to free them up to do better work, it's not always the case, because the good automated tests are rarely a one-to-one mapping of what human testers are actually doing. So there's a nice little feedback loop I think we can start to see, and that's if we can expose people to automation in a context that is meaningful to them. So maybe there's a script that you've handed over to them. And I think the natural tendency of a tester when they see this script over time is like, well, maybe if I look at it, I can see, oh, if I change this username, I can have it log in with a different account, or maybe this data can be changed. And the natural curiosity comes out and they start to engage. Maybe they're not writing the code, but maybe they're tweaking it a little bit. And that tweaking turns into I'm interested about code. How can I start to contribute? And as that comes along, they start to share, like, I use this little tool this person gave me. It's fantastic. Automation's amazing. I've started to learn to code a little bit, and it's making my day-to-day job easier. Maybe I'm not quite there adding tests to our framework, but it's meaningful to me. And this is how I can help other people share that. I want other people to have that same value. People need to feel the impact of automation to be able to enjoy it and expose other people to it. And we need that for teams to be successful in automation. So how then can we also reduce anxiety? Now we've seen this test is dead kind of concept come up time and time again, and it's typically some form of tool or some new practice that's going to make our testing jobs irrelevant because we're going to solve it through some other way. Manual testers are kind of under constant fear. No matter how much we reassure them that automation isn't going to replace them, they still feel that tension. They still feel like they're the lesser choice. And part of that is because automation is exclusionary. How many talks or articles have you read where it's like, how do we find tests that are a good fit for good automation candidates, right? Things that fit for us. Again, we've talked about how we exclude the external integrations because those are painful, they're unreliable, or maybe they're not up all the time for us. But we're also excluding people that often don't code. We forget once we start to learn to code just how difficult and intimidating just looking at code can be. Right? So with all that, what we end up doing oftentimes is we're excluding the tester. We're finding ways to kind of isolate a group. We're introducing a silo rather than breaking it down. So what I'd like to see us do more of is consider how we can build inclusive automation. As automators, we're in a position to influence and educate both testers and management. And this is a charge that we're giving that we shouldn't take lightly. We're so eager sometimes to provide solutions, and the quick wins are always adding tests. But we've got a responsibility to provide automation as a service, because testing doesn't necessarily give us more quality to our customers. Right? We don't want to be stuck in a trap where we're providing automation as a magical solution, where somehow the tests just run, no matter what we do, they always pass. And as much as that's a positive thing, we can't let them be so loose and so flexible that we don't have control of the systems that we're testing. Instead, I think to show real value and have a mature approach to automation, we need to think of it as automation as a service, how we as a servant can provide value. So we can provide a service that radiates information to management, because that's what they're looking for through test reporting and reliable results, but also as a service that places values on testers at all skill levels. We see this a lot with developer experience, like we've got IDEs and tooling that helps them provide and be more efficient and have a more positive experience while doing their work. We can have just the same experience through, and we can do this as automation engineers and provide a quality experience for our testers, finding ways to make testing more accessible, more easier to do a better job, to get to testing faster, at the same time as adding the same quality automated testing and that we can run on a regular basis. And this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. And it's something, as a result, I actually won the Eurostar Rising Star Award about this area, and it's something I'll be focusing on developing over the course of the entire year. Some of what I've been doing is working with Jupyter notebooks. These are kind of things we see commonly in data science, but what it does is it allows you to mix interactive code with markdown syntax. So people can, and they have live access to the browser while they're running those bits. So it kind of allows you to chain scripts together. But we'll also be investigating more details with it. There's a group of supporters that are helping kind of, and they're senior testers and very experienced people to kind of help me round out more ideas and how we can make testing inclusive and kind of raise quality across all teams. Working also on some Docker containers to make the setup and all that easier. But if this sounds interesting or intriguing to you, please follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn, reach out or check out the Eurostar Test Huddle. There'll be monthly video updates. I've got one up there. You can kind of get a sense for what Jupyter looks like. So you can see some demonstrations that we're going to work that across the majority of popular programming languages. And then you'll be able to follow the progress as it goes along this year. Also, now is a good time if you want to have questions. If you haven't already started typing them up, you might go ahead and start writing those up. And hopefully I'll be able to ask them, answer them for you. And I want to point out that each successive level that we've been going through this model, through this heuristic, it isn't about looking down upon the one below it. Right? It's not a prescription. We're not here to cure a testing problem. There's a value at each level, and there seems to be people you can have a positive result at just particular levels. But you also need to understand that in order to grow and then to succeed, part of that is just like life. You've got to mature a little bit to be able to handle the tooling and the potential problems that you might be seeing. So using this heuristic, I hope you and your teams can have meaningful conversations about building a holistic automation-enabled test strategy. Strategy is something that we can use that can accept blame as opposed to people. Right? If things aren't quite working, we can refine strategy. It's much harder to refine a person's job, right? We don't want to be people getting blamed. We want to iterate and grow and increase quality and serve our customers through something like this, so we can have a feeling of peace when we go through testing. So with that, I invite you to take care of yourselves. It's a stressful place to be working in automation and everybody's working hard, but please reach out and share and create. And again, if you're interested, please connect with me. I'd love to help you out in any way that I can. And I really appreciate your time today.
Hey, thanks, Brendan. That was great.
Thank you.
Hopefully you're still there. We do have a few questions, and I know that some folks will be writing them. I don't know if you have video or if you're able to do video. I always like that touch when people are sharing with me, but whatever's best for you. So the first question I have here is from Amara. And Amara, it's good to see you back on the webinars and always enjoy knowing that you're on here. And she says, how do you recommend approaching automation for a software product that is not complete or even finalized with features yet? I have a framework set up and have started to write tests for things I feel confident will not change in the final version. But what else can I do? I currently have no developer buy-in since they are, and the emphasis is mine, not hers. I currently have no developer buy-in since they are hard at work trying to develop the product, and we have a small number of people working on things.
I think it sounds like you've got a very, very solid start. I think keeping your tests lean and showing value is probably the best thing that you can do, so that we don't start introducing kind of failures and other things trying to tackle um, existing areas that are still in kind of in flux. And if it's interesting to you, one of the ways I've been tackling this is, as I kind of mentioned, the Jupyter notebooks. Um, what those allow you to do is have parts of your testing be automated and parts of the testing be not automated. So if there's a particular area that's in flux, maybe there's a control that's being frequently changed, you can kind of seed actions there to a person. So you can be kind of have your intro to testing and your exit of testing, that workflow still automated, but with a little bit of manual intervention. I kind of think of them as semi-automated tests, and it kind of rounds out a solution, so that you're not stuck trying to automate things and constantly change them and kind of chasing your tail.
Well, that's great. So Maros, and I apologize if I pronounced that wrong, Maros says, could you please provide an example of inclusive automation approach?
Sure. So some of that, I'm going to keep referencing those Jupyter notebooks because I think they're cool and they've been impactful for my team. Um, I think one thing that you can do is, instead of just having the tests, being able, so often when you start to use your framework, the only way to create data or to consume that code is through writing a test. So if you have a Java framework, you have to write a JUnit test just to do anything inside of your code, just to leverage your UI components. So if you can't like use a script or reference your page object, however you've packaged your page object models or your API client, if you can't use that in, say, like a console application or some other way, you've kind of got a test smell in your automation, right? Because those aren't things that we would accept from our production level developers. So if you need to be able to reference those things in smaller places, and I think adding the cheap, easy conversation is test setup, where staging data using the exact same components that your automation would it's kind of a quick win. I've seen people do chatbots, so they can just kind of do similar things, interact with an application. The other thing I've done is, through that same way, I've got little scripts where I can run to call out to a third-party service like a Mailtrap or New Relic, so that we can say, because so often what we're testing isn't necessarily a new control or new that. It's like we've instrumented this level of this area of the code, so we want to test to make sure it's happening. So we want an analytics event to fire. Well, New Relic has an API, you can query that. So that's more inclusive. I think being able to expose testers to code where they don't have to write it, but they can see it and start to. It's kind of like vaccination ideas, right? Through exposure therapy, we kind of get people a little bit more comfortable with code, not because they have to write it in any kind of way. It's just there. They can use it the way anybody else would use code today. Like we use their applications. We can click a button and it runs, but we still see it, and we get kind of more comfortable, and they can start maybe tweaking that. I hope that answers your question, but feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to have an extended conversation about it.
Yeah, that's great. Julia says, I find the quality cathedral idea very intriguing. Are there any other references available or materials available on this? Books, articles, YouTube?
So the quality cathedral is part of the inclusive automation effort that I'll be doing with the Eurostar folks. I've got a nice kind of background to bounce ideas off of. I believe it's my own invention. I don't want to take credit if other people have had that. But please keep an eye out on me. I should have a blog post kind of going into depth about that model and in relationship to the testing pyramid. So stay tuned, folks.
That's great. There are a number of questions around complexity. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to lump all these into one, but a number of questions where people are talking about how complex systems are getting. And you talked a little bit about complexity with test automation as well. So can you talk a little bit about how the complexity of the system affects the complexity of the test automation, or how those are related or should be related?
Sure, I'm going to shortcut you a little bit and just kind of say what immediately came to mind. I think automation engineers or testers working with code, we kind of have a chip on our shoulder, and we want to prove that we can write code well and do it in a way that we can show, like, oh yeah, we can write code too. It's not just developers. So we make systems that we think we're kind of aping building an application, and we do it the way kind of with a less mature, oftentimes. I don't want to say all teams are doing this. I think there's very sophisticated engineers out there, but sometimes we add things and we do things just because we can. We add more tests, more and more tests, because we want to add all these variants where really maybe the solution isn't finding a way to scale them horizontally with containers. It's a way to pare it down into just the minimum viable set of tests that we can have. And I think same thing with our frameworks. We want to make them always reliable, and we kind of allow a little bit of slack in there, and I think magic starts to creep in. Where we have to accept that there's legitimate times where our tests can and should fail, right? If your elements are changing, that's okay. Finding a way to always make them work, you kind of have to start questioning what we're trying to do. Is it always have them pass? Or is it reflect the state of the system and our understanding of it through those tests? Because they're kind of like a canary, right, in the tunnel, right? Like if those start failing, something changed, and maybe you should be alert. Maybe it affects things that you don't understand. Maybe accessibility is suffering because of some of the element changes.
Yeah, that's great.
Does that answer your question?
I think that's a very good one. I don't know if it answers every single question we had about complexity, but what I can do is potentially send these questions over to you, and if you feel like it didn't answer, maybe you can get back with folks if you have the time or are available for that.
Sure.
So, and one more before we see who's going to win this gift card from Amazon. Penny, who I love seeing on here, and Penny, it's been a while,
Hey,
and I'm glad to see you here. Penny asked about Jupyter Notebooks that you mentioned, and finding resources on that. She said she found the quick start guide. Do you have any other suggestions on getting started with Jupyter Notebook?
I'm going to punt again to the ongoing work this year. There's kind of a little bit of a hurdle of setup and getting examples, but part of what that inclusive automation effort is getting working examples against existing test sites. So like the automation and testing folks have a nice bed and breakfast website where you can kind of test your automation against. There's a couple others, and what I'm hoping to do is have across a multitude of languages, have a container you can spin up that has existing page models with example automated tests in a traditional fashion, as well as some meaningful examples of the Jupyter notebooks. The first update I have for the December update, I believe, from the test huddle should have a demo of at least using them, but more to come.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to it. And Penny says thanks. But I'm really looking forward to that. I heard about Jupyter Notebooks a long time ago, and I haven't been able to implement anything with it yet, but I'm looking forward to what you've done. So Brendan, thank you so much, and stick around. Let's see who wins this Amazon gift card. So who is going to win? I noticed recently, I don't think you guys can hear the drum roll on this. I wish you could, because there's a drum roll right there. Who's going to win? And the answer is Julia S. in Michigan. So Julia, thank you so much for being here, and congratulations on winning the Amazon gift card. You'll find it coming to you through the same email address you registered here with. So look for that in the next few days. And if you don't see it in the next few days, ping me, because sometimes I get busy and forget to do that. But I'll try to do it as quickly as I can here. So thank you all so much for being here. Remember, for test automation, give us a yell at Beaufort Fairmont. We love hearing about your challenges with test automation and trying to solve them with you. So if you need some folks who have been there, done that, tried these things that we're talking about, and who take approaches very similar to what Brendan is talking about here, make sure to reach out. I'd love to talk to you about your challenge and how we could help. And also follow me on Twitter, dpaulmerrill, and feel free to email me if you need anything. Lots of people always ask, is this recorded? Yes, it's recorded. It should be available at this very same link that you came to this webinar with. So look there. It usually takes a little while for it to generate, so it may be 20, 30, 40 minutes. And then the other thing is on our webinars page. So beaufortfairmont.com/webinars has all of our older archives of these things. So thank you so much for being here today. We look forward to seeing you next time. We'll have Jana Leffler, who's going to talk about CI/CD in GitLab, and it's going to be awesome. So make sure to join us for Jana. She's a wonderful speaker, and it's going to be very hands-on from what I understand. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next month. Thanks, Brendan.
Thank you.